Welcome to Reminisce with Terry and my series on This Week in History. This episode sees us back in France, where the French Revolution has taken a nasty turn. Jack the Ripper commits his first known crime. Germany invades Poland, and the European continent is thrust into another deadly war. Qatar, hosts of this year's World Cup, gains its independence, and a much-loved conservationist and animal lover meets an untimely death. Join us, won't you? September 1793. The Reign of Terror begins. The Reign of Terror was a period of the French Revolution when, following the creation of the First Republic, a series of massacres and numerous public executions took place in response to revolutionary fervour, anti-clerical sentiment, and accusations of treason by the Committee of Public Safety. In Paris, a wave of executions followed. In the provinces, representatives on mission and surveillance committees instituted local terrors. The terror had an economic side embodied in the maximum, a price control measure demanded by the lower classes of Paris, and a religious side that was embodied in the program of de-Christianization pursued by the followers of Jacques Hébert. During the Terror, the Committee of Public Safety, of which Maximilien Robespierre was the most prominent member, exercised a virtual dictatorial control over the French government. In the spring of 1794, it eliminated its enemies to the left, the Hébertists, and to the right, the Indulgents, or followers of Georges Danton. Still, uncertain of its position, the committee obtained the law of 22, Prairial, Year 2, which was June the 10th, 1794, which suspended a suspect's right to public trial and to legal assistance and left the jury a choice only of acquittal or death. The Great Terror that followed, in which about 1,400 persons were executed, contributed to the fall of Robespierre in July the 27th. During the Reign of Terror, at least 300,000 suspects were arrested. "17,000 were officially executed, and most of these by the guillotine, and perhaps 10,000 died in prison or without trial." 31st of August, 18 1888. Mary Ann Nichols, Jack the Ripper's first victim. Mary married William Nichols at the Church of St. Bride's, Fleet Street. They had 5 children. But after 14 years of marriage, Mary left William and the 4 younger children, and through a binge-filled haze of alcohol, she turned to prostitution for a living. Short of the 4pence she needed to pay for a bed in the lodging house she lived at, Mary once more found herself on the street. "Never mind," she said, gesturing at the velvet-trimmed straw bonnet she was wearing. "I'll soon get my DOS money. See what a jolly bonnet I've got now." The implication was clear. She was heading back out to find a punter. An hour or so later, Mary was seen by one of her roommates on the corner of Whitechapel Road, clearly drunk. She had made her DOS money 3 times over, she boasted, but had already spent it on gin and was off to make some more. Carter, Charles Cross, finds the body as he was walking home through the gloom of Whitechapel. As he drew closer to something lying on the ground, he realised that it was in fact the prone form of a woman who was either drunk or dead, and he stopped in his tracks. As Cross stood rooted to the spot, unsure of what to do next, he heard footsteps approaching from the direction that he had just come from. Turning, he saw another carter, Robert Paul, walking towards him. "Come and look over here," Cross called. "There is a woman lying on the pavement." The 2 men stepped over the road and stooped down over the prostrate figure. She was lying on her back. Her legs were straight out, and her skirts were raised almost over her waist. Charles Cross reached out and touched her face, which was warm, and her hands, which were cold and limp. "I believe she is dead," he observed. Robert Paul, meanwhile, placed his hand on the woman's chest and thought he felt a slight movement. "I think she's breathing," he said, "but very little if she is." Paul suggested that they sit the woman up, but Cross refused to touch her again. So, deciding, perhaps somewhat callously, that they were late for work and had done as much as they could, they pulled her skirts back down to her knees to cover her decency and set off for their respective places of employment, agreeing to tell the first policeman they encountered of their find. But what neither man had noticed in the pitch darkness of Buck's Row was that the woman's throat had been slashed so savagely that, according to some newspaper reports, her head had almost been severed from her body. First of September, 1939. Germany invades Poland. Britain and France essentially acquiesced as Nazi Germany revoked the Versailles Treaty's limitations on its military in 1935, and when it remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936 and annexed Austria in March 1938. Then, in response to Hitler's threat to wage war against Czechoslovakia, British and French leaders signed the Munich Agreement in September 1938. This agreement ceded to Germany the Czech border region known as the Sudetenland, in return for Hitler's promise to resolve all future conflicts peacefully. Germany dismantled the entire Czech state in March 1939, despite all the agreements with France and England. The policy of appeasing Hitler had been a complete disaster and failure.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II. Poland's 34 million inhabitants, crushed, scattered, and enslaved. Tens of thousands of square miles of territory shrink before the movement of lightning-armored columns. Poland and the world learn the meaning of a grim new word: Blitzkrieg.
The final straw. Poland is invaded. Creating a false flag incident where SS soldiers fired on German troops near the border between Poland and Germany, Hitler claimed that Poland had provoked the Germans to retaliate. Germany launched its pre-planned and unprovoked attack at dawn on September 1st, 1939, with an advanced force consisting of more than 2,000 tanks, supported by nearly 900 bombers and over 400 fighter planes. In all, Germany deployed 60 divisions and nearly 1.5 million men in the invasion. From East Prussia and Germany in the north, and Silesia and Slovakia in the south, German units quickly broke through Polish defences along the border and advanced on Warsaw in a massive encirclement attack. The Polish army also lacked modern arms and equipment, had few armoured and motorised units, and could deploy little more than 300 planes, most of which the Luftwaffe destroyed in the first few days of the invasion. Despite fighting tenaciously and inflicting serious casualties on the Germans, the Polish army was defeated within weeks. Poland found itself fighting a two-front war when the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east on September the 17th. The Polish government fled the country that same day. After heavy shelling and bombing, Warsaw officially surrendered to the Germans on September the 28th, 1939. The 3rd of September 1971, Qatar became independent from the UK. Qatar's modern history begins conventionally in 1766 with the migration to the peninsula of families from Kuwait, notably the Khalifa family. Their settlement at the new town of Al-Zubarah grew into a small pearl diving and trade centre. In 1783, the Khalifa family led the conquest of nearby Bahrain, where they remained the ruling family throughout the 20th century. Qatar came to the attention of the British in 1867 when a dispute between the Bahraini Khalifa, who continued to hold some claim to Al-Zubarah, and the Qatari residents escalated into a major confrontation, in the course of which Doha was virtually destroyed. Until the attack, Britain had viewed Qatar as a Bahraini dependency. It then signed a separate treaty with Mohammed ibn Thani, in 1868, setting the course both for Qatar's future independence and for the rule of the Thani dynasty, who, until the treaty, were only among several important families on the peninsula. In 1916, Britain signed a treaty with Qatar's leaders that resembled early agreements with other Gulf states, giving Britain control over foreign policy in return for British protection. This was known as the Trucial States Agreement. In 1968, Britain announced plans to withdraw from the Gulf. After negotiations with neighbouring sheikdoms, those of the present United Arab Emirates, the UAE, and Bahrain, Qatar declared independence on September the 3rd, 1971. September 2006. Steve Irwin dies after being stung by a stingray. Steve Irwin, known as the crocodile hunter around the world, was in Bat Reef working on Ocean's Deadliest, a documentary that he was co-hosting with Philippe
I'm Steve Irwin, and these are highly venomous sea crayfish.
Cousteau Jr. At the time, filming had been suspended due to bad weather, so Steve went out snorkeling to capture footage for Bindi, the Jungle Girl, a children's nature series he was developing that would be presented by his daughter, Bindi. While in shallow waters, he came across a short-tailed stingray, which he followed in an attempt to capture footage of it. Suddenly, it reared up and started stabbing him wildly with its stinger. The short-tailed stingray is the largest stingray in the world, with a span of about 2 metres, and its powerful tail ends in a barbed spine that can be as long as 8 inches.
Yeah, well, that's what life's about, isn't it? That's what life's about, mate. Just getting out there, having fun, you know, following your passion and just being enthusiastic, you know? That's the go. Crikey. Yeah, crikey, have a look at this little beauty.
Unfortunately, Steve's heart was pierced and he died shortly after. It must be noted that an attack such as this is incredibly rare. Known famously around the world for his enthusiasm, his catch cry, "Crikey!" and his conservation work, Steve's work is continued by his wife Terry, daughter Bindi, and son Robbie. Well, that's all we have for this week in This Week in History. I hope you've really enjoyed it, and if you have, please subscribe, click the like button and ring the bell. And I really look forward to seeing you next time on Reminisce with Terry.